can you kind of talk a little bit about over your last number of years with Henning Larsen and how innovation and sustainability has really impacted your day-to-day or even your project delivery within Henning Larsen?
Yeah, I've been with Henning Larsen for around 15 years, and there's been a lot of changes, not only at Henning Larsen, but the whole industry. I think the biggest changes I have seen is that it's not so much about how the architecture look like, it's much more what it can do.
Yeah.
That is the discussion, the impact through architecture. Yeah. That is what drives the design process. That is what we are discussing with the client, and that is what we are pushing for within innovation.
And is that from a social impact kind of perspective? Is it from a sustainability? Is it much broader?
It's sustainability, but it's a broad term of sustainability. It's both for the social impact, the environmental, and the economic impact. So we are a global design firm. We don't have like set a carbon target on all projects. We are very much contextual based practice.
Yeah.
Our architecture doesn't have a design, like a fixed design language. So many other star architects have. It's much more based on the context. So the design process that we are doing is always to go to do data collection as the first thing to do. And it seems very boring from an architectural point of view.
That's the engineering.
Most architects just take the napkin and start sketching. And of course, we also need to embrace the creative process. But it's very much understanding where we can do the biggest impact. Is it on carbon? Is it on social justice? Is it on on health and well-being, and so that is the first thing. That goes beyond the built boundary. It's very much looking into neighborhood.
I know that you guys are involved in the timber neighborhood out in Amager. If I'm correct,
we're doing the Felleby. Been a long process, and also, but it's also a process that we are super proud of because it's have been a lot of discussion and debate around it. And that had also made us more sharp in the process with the client to when we are saying something, we are really meaning it. Also, if you go into Henning Larsen homepage, you will never see the word sustainability.
Yeah.
It's a term we don't use anymore because we also believe that none of our project is sustainable. At the moment, we are heading to be sustainable, but none of our projects. So we are very much focused on where do we create the impact and how do we document also. So,
as they say, the most sustainable building is the one we don't build.
Yeah, that is the most sustainable square meter is the one that is never built. And it's also by be still relevant in the industry. We are seeing also a young generation of architects that are not, their dream is not to do a high rise on Manhattan anymore. Yeah. Their dream is to do impact and be engaged with the local community, be engaged with the project. So they are more looking for not the studio to work for, what kind of project they're working on.
Yeah, so the much more social impact kind
of
architecture.
The social impact is super important. And they are also saying what they can say no to project. We have architects that say, young architects, I don't want to work with this kind of project. Maybe it's in a geography that they don't empathize, and maybe it's with a client. And so we have those discussing very much upfront, and they're also allowed to step out of a project to be becoming a part of another project.
It's ethics at the end of the day, both personal ethics and organizational ethics.
A lot of personal ethics that are driving the passion. And of course, you need passionate architects, so you need to stimulate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you do, box off the architectural process and evolution on a project, what are you going to get? Probably something that you don't really like.
No, I think that's also our purpose to always challenge the status quo. I think that, like, I've been trained as an engineer, and what I've been training at university is to refine everything, and then you have 2 lines, and then you have the result. That is what the engineers are good at, to refining the exercise, getting things done better, more exact. But the architects, we're not allowed to design the same building twice because we need to innovate all the time. So this combination of being super good at something, but also being questioning it all the time.
That creativity part, it's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
I often wonder with the drive for more sustainable solutions, does sustainability suppress innovation then by saying, well, if we are going to build a building, it needs to be a square building. It can't be these fancy shapes anymore because of the use of materials, et cetera, et cetera. So is sustainability suppressing architectural?
No, I think that, yes and no. I think Of course, it should also be pressing architecture. Otherwise, it doesn't have a purpose. It's not ambitious enough. But it's again creating this balance. Like 20 years ago, when there was super focus on energy reduction, we got some kind of third in architecture that was like a tunnel vision of reducing energy, small windows and thick walls.
Yeah.
And now we are just on the edge with the tunnel vision of carbon, getting very compact building again, and with no ornamentation at all, because ornamentation costs on CO2, double high rooms, atrium cost on CO2. So a lot of those things we are discussing, that what is the influence on architecture.
Yeah.
But again, it's much more to also be open about the discussion and be clear on the data part of it.
Yeah. In some respects, it's kind of the industry has these things they grab onto, as you mentioned, energy a few years ago. Now it's carbon. Carbon is certainly something the industry is grabbing onto, the need for LCA, and LCA driving the solutions at the architectural and engineering solutions, actually, for that matter. Is it restricting that impact of the building from a social perspective, for example, if we are squeezing the design flexibility?
But I think it's also, again, up to the architect to find. Architects are always looking for some kind of what I call barriers, or some kind of obstacles to kind of drive the innovation, or drive the creativity and the process. And when you're looking into carbon, like a lot of things we see what's coming up in timber structures at the moment.
Yeah.
So for us, it's good to, like, now we set up a process to find the superstructure, the load-bearing structures as the first point, to understand what kind of, because that is very much related to the carbon.
That's right.
And then going a step back and see what can we do with the architecture, the form giving within that kind of structure.
Yeah.
Because if you start with the form giving and with the style, big overhang and a big, like something like that, and then we go, it needs to be a timber, but we cannot do the span, and then it's like, it's non-efficient.
In situ concrete.
They need to end up with some kind of, so for us, it's very much, again, going a bit back as architects, like 100 years ago, to understand the structural system and inspired by the structural system. And I think that is also some of the great projects that, like Utzon Opera House in Sydney, is based on a structural principle. So I think it's only.
And I find that is the true essence of architecture, is perhaps then constraining the initial napkin development into, well, if you only have a box to work with, how can you really then influence it architecturally? And that's having the constraints and having the flexibility at the same time connected kind of really drives that innovation, I think, from an architectural perspective. You'll see, I think we'll see it now more in the future with the renovation of existing buildings and the need to reuse existing buildings. That's really driving kind of innovation in the solutions that architects are coming with. How do we turn this building into something that's prepared for the future, and what does that building then look like from an architectural perspective, etc.?